My fiance's mom forced me to sign a prenup because I looked like the type who'd trap a man, then tried to void it after finding out my dad owns luxury hotels. When I finally asked why my family's money mattered so much, she scoffed. "You should have disclosed everything before tricking us into this." I didn't say a word. That was 4 months ago. This morning, she got caught sneaking into our wedding dressed as staff, then sat alone in her car for hours after we left through the side door. My Mael demanded that I sign a prenuptial agreement because she assumed that I was a gold digger. Now she's livid and wants to cancel it after she discovered that my dad owns luxury hotels. My future mother-in-law, let's call her Brenda, insisted I sign a prenup because she was convinced I was a gold digger, but now she's practically foaming at the mouth trying to get it canceled after discovering my dad owns a chain of boutique hotels. My fiancé Liam is a software engineer, and I'm a marketing manager, earning a very similar salary. We've been together for 2 years, got engaged 3 months ago, and are planning our wedding for next spring, about 9 months away. His family is a mix of academics and civil servants. While my dad built his hotel business from scratch, my mom is a retired art teacher, and my older brother and his husband are both graphic designers. My parents still live in the charming, slightly rambling Victorian house they bought when they were first married. It's where they raised us, and it's filled with memories and close to all their oldest friends. I've never been one to flaunt wealth. It just feels unnecessary. For instance, I ride my bicycle or take the bus most places because city traffic is a nightmare and parking is exorbitant, while Liam drives a sleek Audi. I have a perfectly functional older smartphone, and he constantly ribs me for not upgrading to the latest model. I'm more likely to find a great dress at a consignment shop than spend a fortune on something I'll wear once, and I genuinely prefer a good taco truck to a Michelin-starred experience. I suppose I never explicitly detailed the extent of my father's success because it just didn't seem pertinent to my relationship with Liam. I think Liam and his family, based on my lifestyle, just assumed my family was comfortably middle class. After our engagement, we had dinner at his parents' house, and Brenda asked about my future career plans. I mentioned I was considering leaving my current agency role after the wedding to help manage the marketing for my father's hotel group. The atmosphere at the table shifted instantly. Brenda got this pinched, suspicious look, questioning why I'd abandon a promising career, and if I intended for Liam to bear all the financial responsibility. That's when the prenup demand came, and honestly, I was fine with it. I signed without a fuss. Fast forward to a couple of months ago when we dived into serious wedding planning. In my culture, we're Italian-American, and Liam's family is more waspy, so our wedding traditions differ significantly. Italian weddings are grand, joyous affairs, and this is the one area where my family truly indulges. My parents started talking about inviting around 350 guests from our side, especially since I'll be stepping into a more public-facing role with the family business, and those connections are important. Plus, they envisioned a full weekend of events, a rehearsal dinner, the ceremony, a lavish reception, and a farewell brunch. My dad even floated the idea of booking out one of his smaller countryside hotels for the entire celebration. Brenda and her husband immediately stated that if we wanted such an extravagant wedding, we'd be footing the entire bill. My father just chuckled and assured them he was planning to cover everything regardless. As the planning progressed, and they saw the caliber of venues we were shortlisting and the vendors we were engaging, caterers, florists, musicians, Liam's family began to realize the scale of spending was far beyond what they could have imagined or afforded. I think that's when it dawned on them that my father's business wasn't just a couple of bed and breakfasts. They did some online searching, found the hotel group's corporate website, and saw the portfolio, the press features, and the financial overviews. Now, his family, especially Brenda, is incensed, accusing me of deliberately concealing my family's wealth. I'm almost certain they want to shred that prenup, but I'm standing firm. It was their idea, after all. Brenda has been sending me a barrage of texts, calling me deceitful and manipulative for not disclosing my family's financial status from day one. But am I really in the wrong here? Technically, it's my father's wealth, not mine, which is why I live modestly. And yes, I plan to work for his company, but it's because I'm passionate about the industry and want to contribute, not because I feel entitled to a handout. So after all the wedding planning drama and the revelation about my dad's hotel empire, things escalated dramatically. Brenda confronted me during a tense family dinner, with her husband and Liam's siblings present. She launched into a tirade about how I was duplicitous, and had tricked their family by hiding my affluent background. The venom in her voice was startling. It was clear she'd been harboring this resentment for weeks. Liam was visibly tensing up, his jaw tight, a sure sign he was embarrassed and annoyed with his mother. Brenda continued, calling me a charlatan and suggesting Liam should seriously reconsider marrying someone so dishonest. At that point, I'd had enough. I looked her straight in the eye and asked why my family's financial situation was so critically important to her. I asked her bluntly why she needed a full financial disclosure before she could accept me as a daughter-in-law. She looked utterly flabbergasted, as if she couldn't believe I'd dared to challenge her so directly. She stammered, unable to articulate a coherent reason, just muttering about honesty and transparency. Liam stood up, announced we were leaving, and we walked out. Later that evening, Liam and I had a long, serious discussion, and mutually decided that we couldn't have Brenda at our wedding if this was how she was going to behave. It was an incredibly difficult decision, but we both felt it was the only way to ensure a joyful, peaceful celebration and begin our marriage without this cloud of negativity. Liam was the one who called his mother to inform her she wasn't invited, and from what I heard, she completely unraveled at the news. 3 days later, Brenda served us with papers claiming she'd hired a lawyer to sue me for fraudulent misrepresentation in the prenup negotiations, demanding we either void it or she'd tie up our wedding funds in court. I stared at the legal papers in disbelief, my hands trembling slightly as I read through the dense legalese. Liam paced our living room, running his fingers through his hair repeatedly, a habit he'd developed whenever stress overwhelmed him. The lawsuit claimed I'd entered into the prenuptial agreement under false pretenses by not disclosing my family's wealth. The irony wasn't lost on me. Brenda had insisted on the prenup to protect her son from a supposed gold digger, and now she wanted it voided because I wasn't poor enough. My phone buzzed with a text from my dad. He'd already heard through the family grapevine and was offering to send his legal team. I declined politely, knowing that would only fuel Brenda's narrative about our family throwing money at problems. Instead, I called my cousin Ben, who worked as a paralegal and could give me some initial guidance without making the situation even more dramatic. The next morning, Liam drove us to meet with a lawyer his colleague had recommended. The office was modest but professional, and the attorney, Alexandra Chen, listened carefully as we explained the situation. She reviewed the prenup and Brenda's lawsuit, occasionally making notes on her legal pad. After about an hour, she leaned back in her chair and gave us her assessment. The case was essentially frivolous, she explained. There was no legal obligation to disclose family wealth when signing a prenup, especially since the agreement protected both parties equally. The fact that Brenda had initiated the prenup request actually worked in our favor. Alexandra suggested we could countersue for harassment if Brenda continued down this path, but I immediately shook my head. The last thing I wanted was to escalate this family drama into a full-blown legal battle. Over the next few days, Brenda's behavior became increasingly erratic. She started showing up at Liam's workplace, causing scenes in the lobby until security had to escort her out. She called my office repeatedly, leaving voicemails that ranged from tearful pleas to angry threats. My boss pulled me aside after one particularly disruptive call came through to the main line, and I had to explain the situation, mortified that my personal life was affecting my professional reputation. Liam tried reasoning with his father, hoping he could talk sense into Brenda, but his dad seemed caught in the middle, unwilling to challenge his wife but clearly uncomfortable with her actions. During one phone call, I overheard him telling Liam that Brenda felt humiliated that all her friends now knew she'd misjudged her future daughter-in-law so badly. It was about saving face, not about any genuine concern for their son's well-being. The situation reached a breaking point when Brenda showed up at my parents' house on a Saturday afternoon. My mom was in the garden when Brenda marched up the driveway, demanding to speak with my father about the deception. My usually calm mother stepped between Brenda and the front door, politely but firmly telling her to leave. When Brenda refused and started raising her voice, my mom did something I'd never seen before. She pulled out her phone and started recording. Brenda launched into a tirade about how we'd made a fool of her, how she'd told all her book club friends that I was after Liam's money, and now she looked like an idiot. She actually used the phrase social humiliation multiple times. My mom stayed remarkably composed, simply stating that Brenda needed to leave private property. When Brenda took a step toward my mom, my dad appeared in the doorway. He didn't say a word, just stood there with his arms crossed, and something about his presence made Brenda finally back down. That evening, Liam came over, and we all sat around my parents' kitchen table discussing what to do. My dad offered again to involve his lawyers, but Liam was adamant that he wanted to handle his mother without escalating things legally. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes from the stress of being caught between his family and our relationship. My mom made her famous lasagna, trying to inject some normalcy into the situation, but we all just picked at our food. The next week, Brenda tried a different tactic. She started reaching out to extended family members, painting herself as the victim of an elaborate con. She told anyone who would listen that I deliberately trapped her son by hiding my wealth, that the prenup was part of some master plan to humiliate her. Most of Liam's relatives saw through it, but a few bought into her narrative, creating divisions within their family. Liam's sister called me one evening, apologizing for their mother's behavior. She admitted that Brenda had always been controlling, but that this situation had pushed her over the edge. Apparently, Brenda had built her entire identity around being the protective mother who saved her children from bad relationships, and discovering she'd been wrong about me had shattered that self-image. Things escalated when Brenda hired a private investigator to dig into my family's finances. The PI showed up at my brother's design studio, asking questions about our family's wealth and my spending habits. My brother, never one to tolerate nonsense, told the guy to leave and immediately called me. When the PI tried to interview my coworkers, my boss had enough and sent a cease and desist letter to Brenda through the company's legal department. The wedding planning, which should have been joyful, became a source of constant stress. Every vendor meeting was overshadowed by worry about what Brenda might do next. She'd already tried calling several of our vendors, attempting to cancel contracts or change arrangements. Fortunately, we password protected everything after the first incident, but it meant constantly being on guard. One afternoon, while reviewing flower arrangements at the florist, I broke down crying. The florist, a kind woman named Min, who'd known my family for years, sat me down with a cup of tea and listened as I poured out the whole story. She shared her own story about difficult in-laws and reminded me that I was marrying Liam, not his mother. It was exactly what I needed to hear. Liam decided to try one more time to reason with his mother. He arranged to meet her at a neutral location, a coffee shop downtown. I waited in the car, knowing my presence would only make things worse. He emerged an hour later, looking defeated. Brenda had given him an ultimatum: either void the prenup and uninvite my family from the wedding, or she'd continue her legal action and make sure everyone knew what kind of people we really were. That night, Liam made the hardest decision of his life. He called his mother and told her that not only was she not invited to our wedding, but he was cutting contact until she got professional help for her behavior. The sound of pain in his voice as he delivered this message broke my heart. No one should have to choose between their mother and their future spouse. Brenda's reaction was swift and vindictive. She sent a mass email to both our guest lists, filled with accusations and twisted versions of events. She claimed I'd seduced her son for his money, only to reveal I'd been wealthy all along as some sort of cruel joke. The email was so unhinged that most people who received it immediately recognized it as the rantings of someone who'd lost touch with reality. My parents' friends rallied around us, many calling to express their support and shock at Brenda's behavior. Several of Liam's relatives reached out to him, assuring him they understood why he'd made the decision to cut contact. His aunt even offered to step in and help with any traditional mother of the groom duties, a gesture that moved Liam to tears. The legal threats continued for another month, with Brenda's lawyer sending increasingly desperate letters. Alexandra advised us to document everything, but not engage unless Brenda actually filed the lawsuit. It became clear that even Brenda's lawyer was growing uncomfortable with the situation when the letters started focusing more on emotional appeals than legal arguments. During this time, Liam and I grew even closer. Going through this ordeal together, seeing how we each handled the stress and supported each other, actually strengthened our relationship. We started premarital counseling to work through the trauma of the situation, and to ensure we were building our marriage on a solid foundation, despite the chaos around us. The counseling sessions became our sanctuary, a place where we could process everything without judgment. Our therapist, Dr. Martinez, helped us establish boundaries and communication strategies for dealing with difficult family situations. During one session, Liam broke down completely, admitting he'd always known his mother was controlling, but had never imagined she could become this destructive. I held his hand as he worked through years of suppressed frustration about her behavior. Meanwhile, Brenda's campaign against us intensified in unexpected ways. She started contacting my father's business associates, spreading rumors about our family's supposed criminal connections. One of Dad's longtime partners called him, confused about an anonymous tip suggesting the hotels were fronts for money laundering. My father handled it professionally, but I could see the strain in his eyes when he told us about it over Sunday dinner. The situation took a darker turn when I started receiving anonymous packages at work. The first contained printed screenshots of my social media posts with nasty comments scrawled across them in red ink. The second had photos of me taken from a distance, walking to work, having lunch with colleagues, even grocery shopping. My hands shook as I showed them to Liam that evening. We immediately filed a police report, though the officer seemed skeptical about our suspicions regarding Brenda. Liam confronted his father about the packages, but his dad claimed Brenda had been home with him during the times the photos were taken. It wasn't until Liam's sister Sarah called us that we learned the truth. She discovered Brenda had been paying her neighbor's teenage son to follow me around and take pictures. Sarah had overheard Brenda on the phone, giving the kid instructions about where I'd be and when when the revelation devastated Liam. His own mother had essentially hired someone to stalk me. Sarah offered to testify if we needed her to, but warned us that Brenda had been telling anyone who'd listen that I'd probably staged the whole thing for attention. The manipulation was breathtaking in its audacity. My workplace became increasingly uncomfortable. Brenda had somehow obtained my direct supervisor's personal email and sent her a lengthy message detailing why I was untrustworthy and suggesting the company investigate my expense reports for fraud. Thankfully, my supervisor knew me well enough to dismiss it, but HR had to get involved, and I had to sit through an humiliating meeting explaining my future mother-in-law's vendetta. The stress began affecting my health. I developed insomnia, lying awake at night wondering what Brenda would do next. My appetite disappeared, and I lost 10 pounds in 3 weeks. My mother noticed immediately, of course, and started showing up at my apartment with homemade meals, sitting with me until I'd eaten at least half. One evening, while Liam was working late, I heard a knock at my apartment door. Through the peephole, I saw a woman I didn't recognize holding a clipboard. She claimed to be conducting a survey about neighborhood safety. Something felt off, so I didn't open the door. Later, reviewing our building security footage with the doorman, we discovered the woman had tried to get into the building multiple times that week, each time with a different story. It turned out Brenda had hired a private investigator, a different one this time, to dig up dirt on my past relationships. The woman had been trying to interview my neighbors about my lifestyle and any men they'd seen visiting. When that failed, she'd attempted to pose as various service people to gain access to my apartment. The building management banned her from the property and increased security patrols. The wedding vendor harassment escalated too. Despite our password protections, Brenda found creative ways to interfere. She left terrible reviews for our chosen vendors on every platform she could find, claiming they were overpriced and unprofessional. She even created fake social media accounts to spread rumors about our caterer's food safety standards. We spent hours doing damage control, and our caterer nearly dropped us before we explained the situation. My brother and his husband Marcus became unexpected allies. They used their design skills to create a wedding website with multiple security features, including IP tracking for anyone who tried to access vendor information. They also set up a system to screen all wedding-related communications. When Brenda tried to hack into the site using various email addresses, we had digital proof of her attempts. The situation with Liam's extended family grew more complex. His grandmother, who'd initially stayed neutral, called Liam in tears one night. Brenda had been telling her that I'd threatened to ban her from seeing future grandchildren if she didn't support us. The lie was particularly cruel because Liam's grandmother was one of the few family members who'd welcomed me from the start. We spent hours on a video call, reassuring her and showing her the actual threatening messages Brenda had sent us. My father's patience finally ran out when Brenda contacted a business journalist, trying to plant a story about our family's suspicious wealth. The journalist, thankfully, was ethical enough to fact-check and reached out to my father for comment. Dad's legal team sent Brenda a formal cease and desist letter, warning that any further attempts to damage his business reputation would result in a defamation lawsuit. Brenda's response was to double down. She created a blog called The Truth About Gold Diggers, where she posted thinly veiled stories about our situation. She changed names but included enough details that anyone who knew us would recognize the story. The post grew increasingly unhinged, with wild theories about how I'd orchestrated our entire relationship to humiliate her specifically. Liam discovered the blog when a coworker awkwardly asked if everything was okay at home. The humiliation on his face when he read through the post was heartbreaking. His mother had aired every private family moment, every conversation, twisting them all to fit her narrative. The comment section was mostly people telling her she sounded unstable, but a few enablers encouraged her theories. We had to make hard decisions about our friend groups too. Some mutual friends felt uncomfortable taking sides and slowly distanced themselves. Others became fiercely protective, creating a buffer zone around us at social events. My best friend from college, Jessica, started screening my calls and texts, filtering out any unknown numbers that might be Brenda or her flying monkeys. The prenup situation remained unresolved. Brenda's lawyer had stopped returning her calls, we learned through Liam's sister, after realizing the case had no merit. But Brenda had found a new attorney, one who specialized in aggressive litigation. This lawyer sent us a demand letter filled with baseless accusations and threatening expensive legal proceedings unless we agreed to void the prenup and give Brenda compensation for emotional damages. Alexandra reviewed the letter with barely concealed disdain. She pointed out multiple ethical violations and suggested reporting the lawyer to the Bar Association. We decided to wait, hoping Brenda would realize the futility of her actions. But I started keeping a detailed journal of every incident, every threat, every attempt at manipulation, on Alexandra's advice. The effect on our daily lives was exhausting. We changed our routines constantly to avoid predictable patterns. I started working from home more often, and Liam adjusted his hours to ensure we were rarely alone. We installed security cameras and upgraded our locks. Date nights became rare, replaced by quiet evenings at home where we felt safe. My parents wanted to hire security for the wedding, but I resisted. The thought of needing bodyguards at what should be the happiest day of our lives made me want to cancel everything and elope. But Liam reminded me that giving up our dream wedding would be letting Brenda win. We compromised by hiring discreet security who would blend in with the guests. One particularly bad week, I considered calling off the engagement entirely. Not because I didn't love Liam, but because I couldn't bear being the reason for his estrangement from his mother. Liam found me crying in our bathroom at 3 a.m., overwhelmed by guilt. He held me and reminded me that Brenda's choices were her own, that he'd chosen me, and that building our life together was worth any sacrifice. Sarah became our inside source, warning us about Brenda's latest schemes. She told us Brenda had been researching ways to contest the marriage license, looking for technicalities that might invalidate our union. She'd also been contacting wedding venues in our area, trying to book them for our date to prevent us from having options. Fortunately, we'd already secured our venue, but the pettiness was staggering. The family dynamics grew more strained when Liam's father finally stood up to Brenda. During a family gathering we didn't attend, he apparently told her that her behavior was destroying their family and demanded she seek therapy. Brenda's response was to accuse him of being manipulated by us, leading to their first separation in 30 years of marriage. Liam's dad moved in with Sarah temporarily, adding another layer of guilt to our already heavy burden. My work performance inevitably suffered. Despite my best efforts, the constant stress and disruptions affected my focus. I made mistakes I never would have before, missed deadlines, and struggled to maintain my usual creativity. My annual review reflected this, and though my supervisor was understanding, I knew my career was taking a hit because of Brenda's vendetta. The blog posts became more frequent and more deranged. Brenda started incorporating conspiracy theories, suggesting my family was connected to various criminal organizations. She posted photos she'd somehow obtained of our family gatherings, circling faces and drawing connections that existed only in her mind. We consulted with a cybersecurity expert about getting the blog taken down, but she kept creating new ones. Then came the incident that changed everything. I was leaving my gym one evening when a man approached me in the parking lot. He claimed his car wouldn't start and asked if I could give him a jump. Something about his demeanor made me uneasy, so I politely declined and hurried to my car. As I drove away, I noticed him getting into his supposedly broken car and following me. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to the nearest police station and waited in the parking lot. The man circled the block several times before disappearing. The next day, Sarah called to warn us that she'd overheard Brenda on the phone with someone, discussing payment for scaring some sense into me. The police took this more seriously, especially combined with our previous reports. Liam was furious in a way I'd never seen before. He drove straight to his parents' house, where Brenda was staying alone since his father's departure, and confronted her. I wasn't there, but Sarah, who'd followed him worried about what might happen, recorded the conversation. Brenda didn't deny hiring someone to frighten me. Instead, she justified it as trying to show me what it felt like to be ambushed and deceived. The recording became crucial evidence. The police finally had enough to charge Brenda with harassment and stalking by proxy. The arrest happened on a Tuesday morning. Liam's father called us, his voice broken, to let us know. Despite everything, Liam cried. No son wants to see his mother in handcuffs no matter what she's done. The arrest made local news, though thankfully our names were kept out of it. Local woman arrested for stalking. Future daughter-in-law became water cooler gossip, and I had to endure knowing looks from people who'd figured out the connection. My parents' friends closed ranks around us, but the humiliation still stung. Brenda's arrest didn't end the drama, it amplified it. She posted bail immediately, and used her temporary freedom to escalate her campaign. She started a petition to have me fired from my job, claiming I was a danger to the workplace. She contacted every professional connection she could find on my LinkedIn, warning them about my deceptive nature. She even reached out to my college alumni association with a formal complaint about my character. The legal system moved slowly. Court dates were set and postponed. Brenda hired a high-profile defense attorney who specialized in turning defendants into victims. They crafted a narrative where Brenda was a concerned mother trying to protect her son from a manipulative woman who'd hidden crucial information. The fact that the crucial information was my family's financial success seemed to escape them. Our wedding plans continued in this shadow. Every decision felt heavy with the weight of potential sabotage. We hired a wedding planner specifically experienced in high-security events. She'd previously worked with celebrities and politicians, and her expertise in preventing disruptions became invaluable. She implemented protocols I'd never imagined needing: fake vendor names, decoy deliveries, and contingency plans for every possible scenario. The prenup remained a bizarre sticking point. Even facing criminal charges, Brenda continued to insist it was signed under false pretenses. Her new lawyer filed motion after motion, trying to force us into mediation. Alexandra swatted them away like flies, but each one cost time and money. The irony that Brenda was spending tens of thousands of dollars fighting a prenup she'd originally demanded wasn't lost on anyone. My relationship with Liam deepened through this crucible. We learned to communicate without words, sensing each other's anxiety levels and providing support instinctively. Our counseling sessions evolved from crisis management to building strategies for long-term resilience. Dr. Martinez remarked that while she wouldn't wish our situation on anyone, we developed relationship skills that many couples don't achieve until decades into marriage. The extended family situation grew more complex as people chose sides. Some of Liam's relatives, exhausted by the drama, simply withdrew from both parties. Others became vocal supporters, publicly condemning Brenda's behavior. His aunt organized a Team Liam and Bride dinner to show support, which touched us deeply, even as it highlighted the family fracture. Work became my escape, despite the challenges. I threw myself into a major campaign for a new client, using the creative process to channel my stress. My colleagues, now fully aware of the situation, formed a protective circle. They screened my calls, walked me to my car, and even created a code word system for if Brenda or her associates showed up. The security measures for our daily life became routine. We varied our routes, avoided posting on social media, and became hyper-aware of our surroundings. What had once been a carefree relationship now required constant vigilance. Yet somehow we found moments of joy, cooking together, binge-watching shows, taking weekend trips to places Brenda wouldn't think to look for us. As the wedding date approached, the tension ratcheted up. Brenda, perhaps realizing her legal strategies were failing, tried emotional manipulation. She sent Liam childhood photos with guilt-laden messages about missing his wedding. She had relatives call him to plead her case. She even staged a collapse at a family event, claiming the stress of being estranged from her son was killing her. The fake collapse stunt backfired spectacularly. Liam's cousin, who happened to be an EMT, was at the family gathering and immediately recognized the performance for what it was. He loudly announced that Brenda's vitals were perfectly normal and suggested calling an ambulance if she was truly concerned about her health. Brenda miraculously recovered within seconds, but the damage to her credibility was done. 2 weeks before our wedding, I received a call from our venue coordinator. Someone claiming to be me had called trying to cancel our reservation. The coordinator, thankfully, remembered our security protocols and asked for the password. When the caller couldn't provide it, she hung up and immediately notified us. The caller ID showed it came from a burner phone, but we all knew who was behind it. Sarah discovered Brenda had been meeting with a group of women from her church, spinning tales about how I'd corrupted her son. She'd convinced them to pray for Liam's salvation from my influence. One of the women's daughters worked at our bakery and overheard her mother discussing plans to intervene at our wedding ceremony. We had to add the entire prayer group to our security watch list. The situation with my family business escalated when Brenda hired someone to leave fake negative reviews on all our hotel properties' websites. The reviews followed a pattern, all posted within the same 48-hour window, all mentioning vague management issues and questionable business practices. My father's IT team traced the IP addresses to a single internet cafe near Brenda's house. We had to hire a reputation management firm to combat the false reviews. Liam's father reached his breaking point when Brenda emptied their joint savings account to fund her vendetta. He'd been monitoring their finances and discovered she'd withdrawn nearly $50,000 for legal fees, private investigators, and her various schemes. He immediately filed for legal separation and froze their remaining assets. Brenda showed up at Sarah's house that night, demanding Liam's father come outside, but he refused to engage. My brother and Marcus offered to let us stay with them the week before the wedding. meeting, worried about potential escalation. We accepted, grateful for the buffer. Their guest room became our temporary sanctuary, and Marcus's cooking skills kept us well fed despite the stress. They even organized impromptu game nights to help us relax, though we all kept our phones close in case of emergency. 3 days before the wedding, our photographer called in a panic. Someone had contacted him claiming the wedding was canceled due to a family emergency. He'd almost refunded our deposit before deciding to verify with us directly. We spent the next several hours calling every single vendor, confirming our plans and reminding them about the security protocols. Each vendor had a similar story. Someone had tried to interfere with their services. The prenup drama reached absurd heights when Brenda's latest lawyer filed an emergency injunction trying to prevent our marriage until the prenup matter was resolved. Alexandra had to appear before a judge to argue against it. The judge, clearly irritated by the waste of court time, dismissed the injunction and warned Brenda's lawyer about filing frivolous motions. He also noted that the criminal harassment case against Brenda would likely impact any civil proceedings. Our rehearsal dinner became a security operation. We held it at a private dining room in one of my father's hotels, with security stationed at every entrance. The guest list was strictly limited to immediate family and wedding party members who'd been supportive throughout the ordeal. Liam's father attended, looking relieved to be there without Brenda. He pulled Liam aside during cocktails, apologizing for not intervening sooner with his wife's behavior. That night, Sarah called with disturbing news. She'd found Brenda's laptop open and discovered she'd been researching how to object during wedding ceremonies and what legal grounds existed to stop a marriage. There were dozens of browser tabs open about marriage laws, ceremonial interruptions, and even how to hire actors to disrupt events. Sarah took photos of everything for our documentation. The morning of our wedding, I woke up to dozens of texts. Brenda had sent a mass message to our entire guest list at 3 a.m., claiming the wedding was postponed due to legal complications. She included a rambling explanation about the prenup situation and urged guests not to attend. My phone rang constantly as confused guests sought clarification. My mother and Liam's aunt divided the guest list and spent the morning calling everyone to confirm the wedding was proceeding as planned. Our security team intercepted Brenda trying to enter the venue through a service entrance 2 hours before the ceremony. She'd dressed as catering staff, complete with a fake uniform and clipboard. When confronted, she claimed she just wanted to see her son get married. The security team escorted her off the property and maintained a perimeter to ensure she couldn't return. They found her car parked nearby with a box of flyers denouncing our marriage. During the ceremony, I noticed our security team tensing as a woman in the back stood up. My heart stopped for a moment before I realized it was just an elderly guest looking for the restroom. The officiant, whom we'd briefed on the situation, smoothly continued with the vows. When he asked if anyone objected, there was a tense silence before he quickly moved on. Liam squeezed my hand, and I saw tears in his eyes as we exchanged rings. The reception proceeded without major incident, though our security team later told us they'd turned away 3 separate attempts by Brenda to enter using different tactics. She'd tried posing as a florist delivery person, claimed to be with the band, and finally attempted to blend in with a large group of my father's business associates. Each time, security quietly intercepted her before she could cause a scene. Our wedding planner had arranged for a decoy exit, complete with a decorated car and rice-throwing photo opportunity. While guests gathered for that moment, Liam and I slipped out through a side entrance to a different vehicle. We learned later that Brenda had been waiting in the parking lot near the decoy car, presumably planning some final confrontation. Instead, she spent hours waiting for us to emerge while we were already on our way to the airport. During our honeymoon, we kept our phones off except for a daily check-in with Sarah. She reported that Brenda had been posting increasingly frantic messages on social media about missing her son's wedding, trying to garner sympathy while conveniently omitting her role in the situation. The posts were met with skepticism from most who knew the full story, and several family members publicly corrected her narrative. We returned from our honeymoon to find our apartment building had implemented new security measures at our request. All visitors now had to be pre-approved, and the doorman had Brenda's photo with strict instructions not to allow her entry. Our mailbox had been stuffed with letters from her, which we handed over to Alexandra unopened. The building manager informed us that Brenda had tried to gain entry 6 times during our absence. The criminal case against Brenda moved forward slowly. Her lawyer negotiated a plea deal for misdemeanor harassment charges, which would include probation and mandatory counseling. The prosecutor recommended we pursue a restraining order, which Alexandra filed on our behalf. The hearing was set for the following month, giving us time to compile our extensive documentation. My return to work was surprisingly smooth. My colleagues had decorated my desk with wedding cards and flowers, and my supervisor assured me that any performance issues from the past months would be disregarded given the circumstances. I threw myself back into my projects, finding comfort in the routine and normalcy of professional challenges that didn't involve unhinged in-laws. Liam struggled more with the aftermath. Despite everything Brenda had done, she was still his mother, and the estrangement weighed on him. He started individual therapy sessions to process the complex emotions of protecting our marriage while mourning the loss of the mother he'd hoped to have. Some days were harder than others, especially when he'd see mothers and sons together in public. The restraining order hearing arrived faster than expected. Brenda appeared with yet another new lawyer, this one attempting to argue that her actions were those of a concerned mother. The judge reviewed our evidence, the harassment, the stalking, the attempts to sabotage our wedding, the false reviews of my family's business. He granted a 2-year restraining order and warned Brenda that any violation would result in immediate jail time. As we left the courthouse, Brenda called out to Liam, tears streaming down her face. Security stepped between us, but her words still reached us, a mixture of accusations, pleas, and threats that made no coherent sense. Liam didn't turn around, but I felt his whole body tense. In the car afterward, he broke down completely, grieving for the mother he'd lost to her own obsessions. 2 months after the wedding, we received notice that Brenda had been arrested for violating the restraining order. She'd been caught trying to access my personnel file at work by posing as a background check company. This time, the judge showed no leniency. She was sentenced to 30 days in jail and extended probation. Liam's father used the opportunity to file for divorce, finally ready to end their toxic marriage. We started building our new normal. Sunday dinners with my parents became a tradition, with Liam's father often joining us. Sarah visited frequently, becoming closer to both of us through the shared trauma. My brother and Marcus hosted regular game nights that helped us maintain some lightness. Even Liam's extended family began reaching out, expressing support and apologizing for not speaking up sooner. The financial impact of Brenda's harassment campaign was significant. Between legal fees, security measures, and reputation management, we'd spent thousands defending ourselves. The prenup she'd insisted on ironically protected both of us from any financial claims she might have tried to make. Alexandra successfully pursued a civil judgment against Brenda for some of our costs, though collecting would prove difficult given her mounting legal debts. 6 months after the wedding, we received word through Sarah that Brenda had finally started court-mandated therapy. The therapist had diagnosed her with several personality disorders and recommended intensive treatment. Whether she would actually engage with the process remained to be seen, but at least it was a start. Liam felt a tiny spark of hope that maybe, someday in the distant future, some form of relationship might be possible. We found our rhythm as newlyweds: quiet mornings over coffee, evening walks in the park, weekend trips to places that held no bad memories. The hypervigilance slowly faded, though we maintained reasonable security precautions. Our marriage, forged in the crucible of Brenda's campaign against us, proved stronger than either of us had imagined. We'd learned to communicate, support each other, and present a united front against any challenge. The blog Brenda had created was finally taken down after multiple reports for harassment and defamation. The private investigator she'd hired faced his own legal troubles for stalking and trespassing. The teenage neighbor she'd paid to photograph me received community service and a stern lecture from a judge about the consequences of his actions. Piece by piece, the network Brenda had built to torment us crumbled. As our first anniversary approached, we decided to renew our vows in a small private ceremony with just our immediate family and closest friends. No security, no drama, no fear of interruption, just two people who'd survived a trial by fire and emerged stronger. Liam's father attended, Sarah stood as a witness, and my parents hosted a small reception in their backyard. It was everything our actual wedding couldn't be: peaceful, intimate, and entirely about our love for each other. The prenup that started everything still sits in our safe deposit box, a bizarre reminder of how this all began. Sometimes we joke about framing it as the world's most expensive piece of paper, given everything it cost us in legal fees and emotional turmoil. But mostly, we don't think about it at all. We're too busy living our lives, building our careers, and planning for a future that Brenda can no longer touch. Looking forward, we know there will be challenges. Holidays remain complicated, with Liam's family fractured, and Brenda's presence looming even in absence. The question of children brings its own concerns about protecting them from a grandmother who proved herself capable of such destructive behavior. But we face these challenges together, with the hard-won knowledge that we can survive anything as long as we stand united. Our story became a cautionary tale in our social circle about the importance of boundaries and the danger of enabling toxic behavior. Friends sought our advice about dealing with difficult family members, and we always emphasize the same points: document everything, don't negotiate with emotional terrorists, and never sacrifice your peace for someone else's dysfunction. We learned these lessons the hard way, but at least others might benefit from our experience. Today, life feels almost normal. I'm thriving in my role at the agency while also consulting for my father's hotels. Liam received a promotion and leads a team of developers on innovative projects. We're saving for a house, planning future travels, and slowly healing from the trauma of our first year of marriage. Brenda remains in therapy, legally barred from contacting us, a ghost of a presence that no longer has the power to haunt our daily lives. We chose each other, we chose our peace, and we chose to build something beautiful from the ashes of her destruction.